Sekeres and Price for Tuesday, March 18th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the Historic Wall Center, and this program a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sekeres back alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. So much is happening here.
Lots going on.
It is a very busy time in the world of sports and with these Vancouver Canucks. So we'll have a lot of show here today and through the week as this playoff chase continues with, of course, so many off-season matters to reconcile as well. We'll start with one of them, our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. What should the Canucks do with head coach Rick Tocchet? Fire him? Exercise his option? And they hold an option for him next season, but of course, Rick Tocchet has an option as well. Sign him to a contract extension or ask me next month. See how this season, or at least this playoff push, plays out. Blake Price, first shot. What says you?
Well, first of all, we should tidy up the option part, or try to. In the LeBrun piece from today, Patrick Allvin seems to go out of his way to say, we have a club option on him. He mentions nothing about the coach having an option as well. That had been reported earlier this season.
So, yes, but it's semantics. Like, Tocchet could leave, right?
I suppose.
I suppose it's not semantic. Like, if they wanted to leave and Tocchet wanted to exercise, if they wanted him gone and Tocchet wanted to exercise his option, he would get paid.
You're not allowed to enslave a person if they don't want to be there, obviously.
Yes, of course.
That's always the case. But anyhow, I'm going to take the easy exit here, Matt, and that is to say you've got more of info to gather here in the coming weeks. You'd be silly not to. Hey, I see that there's a faction of Canucks fans that just don't want this guy back. They don't want this guy to be. So they're going to vote with their heart. Yeah, totally. And I get their arguments to a large extent, but I'm still going to ask for all 82 games and then some.
I voted that way as well. You have time here. You might as well use it, see how this season plays out. I would say, though, that if you're bringing him back, and I do think as it stands right now they should bring him back, for me that's best done with a contract extension. I know it's become a little bit more in vogue these days to let a coach play his option out, but I am a firm believer in having a head coach locked up beyond the season he is coaching. I believe that because he requires credibility with the group of players in front of him, particularly when it's an immature and fragile group. And I think you can say this Canucks room has been immature and fragile for some time. So it just empowers the coach in a way that playing out the option does not. For me, this is a cost of doing business for a major league sports franchise, and it's an area where the Vancouver Canucks should have that advantage. They don't need to pinch pennies as much as some other teams do, even though, even if they have found themselves paying coaches not to coach in the past. So I debated sign to an extension and asked me next month. I went with the latter, and yes, that is copping out. 15% right now want him fired. Now, Tocchet was on our friend, on with our friends Mike Halford and Jason Bruff this morning. Says he had no time for a contract talk right now. He's all in on this playoff chase. That's his sole focus. Let me ask you, because some people seem to be reading into that Tocchet just doesn't want to be here, and that maybe he's feathering his next nest.
Well, he's by
drawing this out. Yeah, I say that.
Right?
I say that because Allvin in the Athletic piece, sorry, Blake, but let me get to the context here, said Tocchet has done an impressive job under the circumstances. Quote, he's well-liked by the players. He's a great communicator and also has the ability to hold guys accountable. Sure hope he's going to be part of this organization moving forward. That's a conversation that I hope will get to the finish line sooner rather than later. So 2 hopes in that statement.
Yeah.
He sees urgency that Tocchet does not. So it almost sounds like the ball is in Tocchet's court here, at least as Allvin characterizes it.
I do understand what Rick Tocchet is saying. We've talked about this, like the double days off in the NHL where he might get an hour to look at a contract offer. These don't exist on the schedule for the next month. So it's going to be really hard for them to find practice time, much less for him to focus on himself in contract negotiations. That said, I think some of that's overblown. Like, I don't think you need to carve out 5 hours of your day to talk contract with the Vancouver Canucks. I think you can peck away with 30-minute conversations here and there. I see both sides of that. But I think it's a full-throated vote of confidence from the organization. I mean, I don't think there's any two ways about that it sounds like the organization does want to bring him back. He's buying time, and you can view it cynically that he's buying time because he just doesn't want to create a big media storm, but he actually wants out. Or he's buying time because he too wants to see what this team does over the next few weeks, sees what he has to work with. And Matt, I mean, he might try to buy his time into the summer. Like, what are you going to build here? Like, are you going to get me a second line center? Like, he might prolong this as much as he possibly can because he doesn't want this group back. Like, he wants the core pieces back, but he needs more. I'm sure.
Of course he does. Thinking. Of course he does. Like he's wearing the lack of goals a fair bit, and you could just as soon blame personnel as execution or coaching style. We asked that on our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question yesterday. The results are coming up here at the end of the show. And then the other thing is, and we've talked about this, like Tocchet has options. Whether it's going back to television work or whether there's another team that may be interested here and that he has a greater affinity for, or at least a clean slate there as opposed to all the baggage that has had to be carried around over these last couple of years and particularly this year. So there's a lot of different ways that this can go. The one thing that Patrick Allvin has been steadfast on is that he wants Rick Tocchet back, and there's no surprises there. Given the way that he's always talked about Tocchet, I mean, they almost put him on a pedestal. At least they did at one point. Given how quickly they moved to Tocchet as their candidate after firing Bruce Boudreau. So I see a world where Patrick Allvin believes that it is him, it is Jim Rutherford, or at least for now, and it is Rick Tocchet moving this group forward. And I'm not quite as convinced that Rick Tocchet sees it exactly the same way as Patrick Allvin does. But, as you say, it could be just benign. Let me deal with this, and then I'll deal with my own situation. Or there could be mitigating circumstances and context around that. We're going to find out.
He's got to get on a jail-free card in Elias Pettersson, right? Like, anytime people want to evaluate the job that he has done, all he has to do is say, they traded away my 1B center and my 1A center can't put a puck in the net. He's got a very good excuse there. Now, you could argue that maybe he's got a role to play in the reduced production of Elias Pettersson, but he can just point to that and say, if I've got a 100-point center, we're in a way better spot.
Incidentally, if I said 50, I meant 15% when I'm fired in the early voting on our poll.
No, you said 15.
Poll. Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right. So then we have somebody who's misheard. Okay. That's the daily poll question. It's a presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi, where everybody at the dealership and beyond wants to get EP40 back to the top, rallying around him. You save $500 the next day on any new or pre-owned vehicle when he scores a point. Hey, that's still good here. He scored a point against Utah. If he gets 2 points, you can go to Surrey Mitsubishi, ask for $1,000 off the next day. Of course, 5 points, $2,500. You got to mention Sekeres price, and the offer is valid until the next game day. Time to cheer EP40 back to the top. Score more, save more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit them at 13820 104th Avenue. Time now for our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Big night in the Western Conference playoff chase as all 4 teams in contention for the final wild card play. We have the Canucks hosting the Winnipeg Jets to end this so-called homestand. There was the flyaway in Calgary, of course, in the middle of this. But the Canucks opened up with wins against Anaheim and Minnesota, then dropped a couple of games to Dallas and Montreal, split the weekend with Chicago and Utah. Really want to get this one before marching out on a 6-game trip that starts against direct competitor, the St. Louis Blues, on Thursday, and then matriculates to Madison Square Garden, where they'll face JT Miller, and more on him as he spoke yesterday to USA Today. Other games of note tonight, Calgary is facing Miller and the Rangers at the Garden, a second of a back-to-back for the Flames. They lost in Toronto last night. St. Louis is at Nashville, one of 3 left for the Blues against the lowly Nashville Predators. And the Utah Hockey Club is in the Alberta capital, and so the rare night where Canucks fans will be rooting for the Oilers to get on over on Utah, who, of course, pulled closer to the Canucks in that playoff line with the victory here at Rogers Arena on Sunday.
Yeah.
As
for tonight, I mean, as much as Canuck fans will rue giving Utah 2 points, if the miracle happens tonight, and I'll say miracle based on what we saw at practice today and absentees we'll get to in a second, but if the Canucks pull off the miracle win tonight, they are sort of back on par over the last 5-game stretch here. Because if you had told them going in that they would sweep the weekend, but then drop a game to the Winnipeg Jets, I think people would have been okay with that. So there is a chance at redemption here. The question is how much of a chance based on what we saw.
Mm-hmm. Canucks with 73 points in 67 games. They are showing as the final team in the Western Conference playoff entering play tonight, but Calgary does have a game in hand. They are behind just 2 points. Regulation wins could very much be a factor here. Tiebreaker. St. Louis is also on 73 points like the Canucks, but have played an extra game. And the Utah Hockey Club is 2 back of Vancouver on the same number of games played. Connor Garland is banged up. We've known that. He missed the full group morning skate at Rogers Arena. Rick Tocchet calling him a game-time decision, but mentions he is dealing with a lot of issues. In his stead on power play 1 on that left flank, rookie Jonathan Lekramaki. And I know a lot of people have been saying if Lekramaki is going to be on the big club right now, he has got to play in an offensive role with offensive players, not limited minutes in a bottom 6 role. We'll see how that shakes out. He's on a line, or was on a line this morning with Nils Oman and Dakota Joshua.
Oh my gosh. Like Nils Oman and Dakota Joshua, man.
Yeah, the only thing I would say there is that he would have probably played with Oman some in Abbotsford, and Oman did put up some points in Abbotsford, but I hear what you're saying.
Differently, yes, he needs to be playing.
Of course it is. Well, Pettersson with Boeser and Höglander, Suter with Sherwood and DeBrus, Bluger with O'Connor, and Linus Karlsson, who we suspect is standing in for Connor Garland. Linus Karlsson has been recalled on an emergency basis. More on Lekramaki later in the program with Cam Robinson and Dave Hall of Canucksarmy. No Philip Heedle. Rick Tocchet reports he is feeling better, but needless to say, a player with a concussion history taking the sort of hit that he took from Jason Dickinson on Saturday, so he will miss a second straight game. And we have a change on defense as well, where DPD, Elias Pettersson, aligned on the third pair right side with Derek Forbert in place of Victor Mancini. Mancini looks like the healthy scratch tonight. I asked Jeff, I haven't seen anything back. Is this DPD's first go on the right side at the NHL level?
I think he's been there before.
Has he been there before?
Yeah,
okay.
At least in brief looks. It's going to be a test for him, certainly. And Forbert has played a little bit on the right side as well. So it's interesting.
Yeah, but
they keep the veteran on the left side in the natural spot. But maybe you put that as a feather in the cap for the youngster, and that they have the confidence to do that. But it's interesting. Not good enough to play every night. But when you do play, we're going to ask you to play on your offside. Like that's kind of a conflict.
Yeah, that one seemed a little odd to me as well. Thatcher Demko manned his own net at practice. He will travel on the road trip, which begins Thursday in St. Louis, as mentioned. They'll leave tomorrow. They treated today like a practice for his benefit, and this is wise from Rick Tocchet and the coaching staff. Tocchet, you'll remember last week, said he wants Demko to get 2 to 4 practices before he feels good in putting him in the crease in an NHL game. So this qualifies as his second practice. He did practice Friday at UBC with the Canucks. I suspect they'll get a practice in tomorrow before they fly. So 3 practices, I would think, for Demko prior to that St. Louis game. And then we'll see about whether or not they drop him right in or if he is a option for them Saturday at the Garden. And while it's not a back-to-back, you're playing a 6:30 local start in St. Louis on Thursday, and then you're playing a 1 p.m. local start in New York on Saturday. I mean, St. Louis to New York is a decent-sized flight, and with the early start there, so you do wonder whether there is a goaltender split coming down the week for the Vancouver Canucks, and you do wonder whether Thatcher Demko gets one of those games. I can't imagine they go Artur Shilov, so if Demko isn't ready to go, I think you're looking Lankinen for both of those games, with Demko a possibility the next week, Monday game in Jersey perhaps. But we'll see how Thatcher Demko gets through today and what goes on tomorrow in advance of this showdown Thursday against a direct competitor in the St. Louis Blues. The Blues, as we discussed yesterday, have the easiest road to hoe here down the stretch in the final 15 games or so. They got Nashville 3 times. They've got Chicago. They even have Utah at home on the final day of the regular season.
Do you think Shilov's where, Matt?
I don't think Shilov's again.
Really? Okay.
Well,
you
I know he got the.
You think Demko win then?
So if you're getting a practice in tomorrow, because I'm not sure you're going to get a practice in Friday with the early start, I think Demko as soon as Saturday at the Garden. I mean, maybe there's a chance that he plays in St. Louis, but I would think Demko one of the next 3 if all things are good. And preferably one of St. Louis or the Rangers so that you have a fresh goaltender in what is, again, not a back-to-back, but like a day and a half split because of the afternoon start. I don't think Shilov's again, Blake. I know he got the win against Chicago. He's got 2 wins this year. They're against Chicago, but he let in a couple and he looked shaky. Like, you ain't got time to bleed with Artur Shilovs.
The problem is, I think he's probably going to want to have a normal work day, which means, but maybe it's as far as the Devils. Like, I think you have to probably have Lankinen play the next 3. I would be surprised if they put him in with no game day skate.
Yeah. You say the next 3.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see another.
Well, he'd get a game day skate. He'd get a game day skate in either St. Louis or New Jersey.
Yeah, just St. Louis is maybe too early. That's all.
Yeah, there. Okay, so he'd get a game day skate in New Jersey at the very least.
Yeah.
If not against the Rangers with that morning start. Where are we? Oh, yes. Tocchet told Halford and Bruff this morning on Elias Pettersson. We're going to hear from Coach speaking down at the rink here earlier today on Brock Boeser, who's really struggling. But Tocchet told Halford and Bruff that Pettersson likes to regroup and slow the game down, but they want him to play more north style, and they're trying to, quote, reprogram his brain. An ominous comment for some in Canucks Nation who are sitting there wondering, why are you making your creative offensive first-line centerman play sort of a dumbed down game? Do you not need to adapt your system, your style, or at the very least give leash to a player like that, as opposed to have him play a more dumbed down, less creative game? Blake, you've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah, he said north-south. So I'll give him a little bit of a leash on this, in that if he's just saying, I want him to play more direct, I want him to skate downhill, I want him to play at speed a bit more, that's fair. People aren't really reading it as that, though. They're kind of reading it as play like Kiefer Sherwood, like just play simple, dump it in, crash, create a turnover, versus, use your skill, take the time if you want to. Like, he's not Filipino. Like, Filipino plays pretty north-south, right? He goes direct at the net. I think Petey can do that at times. I don't think it's a bad idea to ask him to play at speed, because actually a lot of his nicer moments of late have been with him moving his feet and actually carrying the puck across the blue line with some pace. So I don't think it's a terrible bit of advice. I don't know that you would say, I want him exclusively playing like that. Like, if he wants to slow things down, if he thinks there's a benefit to playing a half-court offense, then, this is what the $11, $12 million guys are supposed to do. They're supposed to be able to make those executive decisions and use their skill in the way that they see fit.
I will. Same thing. There's nuance, there's subtlety here. But at the end of the day, I sure hope that Elias doesn't feel like he doesn't have the latitude to create and use imagination and play the game that best fits his abilities and his ability to affect the game offensively. And I say that because of what we're going to hear here from Rick Tocchet with regards to Brock Boeser. It's 5 points in the last 18 games. He has really struggled without JT Miller. We know that. Brock has addressed that. But listen to this clip, and then I want to come back and discuss, because Tocchet has hit a point with Boeser where he'd rather see him make a wrong play if it is agency, aggressive, proactive, rather than just wallflowering. Here's Tocchet.
Time with the coaches, it's more of a mental thing. Brock's a reactor, and he's waiting. If you're even watching the power play, he's just kind of waiting around. He's got to be. If he even makes the wrong read, I'll take it right now, because he's just kind of like in a state of mind where he's just kind of waiting, and I think he's got to almost just attack. Whatever he does, whether you're the second man on the forecheck or whether you're slot guy, attack. And I think that will help. His pace has to get a little higher. That will help him in all aspects of his game.
Yeah, a reactor.
Don't mind it.
No, that's a great coaching point for Brock right now. Like, Brock, I would rather defend an odd man rush the other way because you've got some snarl and are attacking the net and you're a step slow getting back, than you just sit there and look around and blend, as our friend Frank Corrado says, into the proceedings. Like, something dramatic has to happen here for Brock Boeser if he's going to get back to being the player that he was, alongside, yes, perhaps an imperfect centerman in Elias Pettersson compared to JT Miller, but also get back to being the offensive contributor the Vancouver Canucks need, because he's the one guy on the team with a 40-goal season, and they're short offense, and they're particularly short offense without Filipino. Boeser has to be a part of the solution here.
I would tell him, and I think what Rick Tocchet just said is a variation of this, but I would tell Brock Boeser, go out and get me a goal tonight. And I really don't want you thinking about the system and thinking about where you should be. And you told me to be the shackles are off here, man. And again, I think this is a variation of what he's told him, but I would be that direct and say, go and get me a goal tonight. I don't care how it happens.
Yeah. But I almost feel what's good for the goose is good for the gander here. Like, should that not be the messaging for Elias too?
Yes. Yeah.
Rather than reprogram his brain. Winnipeg is the best defensive hockey team in the National Hockey League.
Oh,
so
really?
It is a very tall order. They're giving up just 2.28 goals per game. And Blake, that's far and away the NHL leader. Connor Hellebuck's goals against average is actually below 2. It is 1.99 on his way to another Vezina trophy. And we are running out of time. If you are a regress to the mean person on the Vancouver Canucks home record, and Blake, I have been a regress to the mean guy on the Canucks home record, stand to be the mayor of Wrongville here, 14, 13, and 7. So added up, they've lost 20 times at Rogers Arena. They only have the 7 home games left, so they got to get to some winning on home ice here if they want to be a playoff team. Only, as Rob Williams pointed out, there are only 3 teams in the National Hockey League that have fewer home ice victories than the Vancouver Canucks. It's Chicago and San Jose and the Utah Hockey Club, who
shouldn't have anything in common with Chicago and San Jose.
Exactly. But like Utah's the same thing. Like if they took care of business a little bit more at home, they would be ahead in this playoff chain. Everybody would be chasing Utah. The Canucks can say the same thing. Anyways, as Rob says, a miserable season on home ice. And of course, season ticket subscribers, many of them were recently told that their tickets are going to cost more money next year. So the ownership box, more on that in a moment, is going to be rooting for a whole lot of home wins here to leave a final good impression in the tastes in the mouths of these season ticket holders.
That's the thing, especially for renewals. The best way to get them is remind them how much fun your product is. And there hasn't been many of those reminders this season. Like how many times, if you're a season ticket holder, and especially if you, and I've heard anecdotal evidence of this, of people that have a particular ice pack where they have seen an even worse winning percentage than the overall record presents, where like I've got the multi-pack of death here where I've seen like 4 wins this season for the Vancouver Canucks. And that's not a great way to resell next year's season tickets.
We talked about the new Irish Stout from Yellow Dog yesterday on St. Paddy's Day and hope everybody had a good one. What else are our friends there at Neighborhood and Yellow Dog and Foolish up to?
Well, the Chase My Tail 12 packs, the cases, because sometimes you need more than 4 tall cans. Get 12 regular cans on special for the month of March. Look for it on sale at private and government liquor stores.
Patrick Allvin has spoken with the Athletics' Pierre LeBrun at the GM's meetings in Florida. He says he's either going to add a center via trade or free agency. Just said it matter-of-factly. It is the glaring need on this hockey club. Allvin is well aware and plans to address in the offseason. The bigger news, or at least for this club in the playoff push, he hopes Thatcher Demko can help down the stretch. Hope, interesting word, and says there's, quote, a good chance of keeping both of them next season, which kind of confirms what we thought when they re-signed Kevin Lankinen to the 5-year deal, that Demko going into the final year of his deal, they're still under $10 million in combined goaltender remuneration. And as we've seen this year, you do require 2 goaltenders. So a little bit of news there from the Canucks GM on Demko. He also spoke on Brock Boeser and did so in a less inflammatory way this time around. He said he couldn't get fair market value for the player at the deadline. Quote, you read the market and set the price, or you think what the market value is for Brock Boeser. But unfortunately, teams had different opinions, and that's where we ended up. Again, there's a whole lot of context here. After Allvin said no steps back at the deadline, it's quite clear that the Canucks weren't going to accept futures for Boeser, or if they were, had a plan to immediately turn those futures around to NHL roster players, like we saw with the Miller trade, like we saw with the Bo Horvat trade that became Philip Hedl. As for Boeser's future here in Vancouver, I would still say there's conversations. If there is a way to make it fit for both parties, maybe there is an extension. So once again, lukewarm or coolish there on the notion of bringing Boeser back on a contract extension.
I think their actions to this point have completely illustrated and outlined what their plans are for the player. And unless they get a steal of a deal. If they get him for $6 million a season, which is not happening, I don't see it.
I mean, what he confirmed today is that Brock Boeser was infinitely available at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
There are no bones about that. They were shopping Boeser. They wanted to move Boeser.
But Matt, like, what's the number that Boeser gets? If he gets to 21 goals, let's give him credit for 3 goals the rest of the way.
Gosh, I sure hope so. Yeah,
which is an uptick. What is he after his 40 goal? What does he get for 21 goals? Like, how much does that affect his price? And people are joking. He's burning millions.
Well, the thing is like he might be playing himself into that 5x8 deal that they offer him in $40 million compensation. I mean, it's still an open market where, supply and demand are such where prices are going to be high with a salary cap jumping $7 million. So I mean, I still have to think he's going to get $50 million in total compensation or thereabouts.
I don't know.
7x7.
I'll believe that when I see it. Honestly, I'll believe it. I think his mobility has become so concerning for unless you're a team that is using him as a finisher, like a team like Edmonton maybe could use him as a finisher. But I think the legs are really, really letting him down here.
Allvin gave Pettersson credit for taking ownership in that media session a couple of weeks back, calling it a big step for him. Quote, he understands what he needs to work on. This league is a humbling league. Lately, you can tell he's been working on his game, and the results are coming. And then he went on to talk about the next step being, to have a good summer of preparation. He also mentioned that Elias has expressed several times that he wants to stay in Vancouver. So a little hint there that the Canucks want to keep Elias Pettersson. We've had the discussion many, many times. The recasting, retooling of this hockey club within the Quinn Hughes window is much easier done with Elias Pettersson and adding a second-line center than having to make an Elias Pettersson deal and then looking for 2 top 2 centers in the same offseason. More Allvin, he said the season started with adversity with the Dakota Joshua cancer diagnosis and the Thatcher Demko injury, which put them on the market for a number 1 goaltender. He mentioned challenges in season like the JT Miller leave of absence, the Philip Roenick injury, but also highlighted what he called great stories, Kevin Lankin and Kiefer Sherwood, Jake DeBrusk. I'm not sure Jake's a great story just yet, but that's me quibbling.
You mentioned Pettersson and the second line center possibility. Let's get to the super chat then for Brybeck, saying, should we offer sheet Rossi or Velarde? I think we've covered the Rossi thing. I think the Rossi offer sheet is a great idea in the offseason. Gabe Velarde, he's having a freaking amazing year. The question is this the topping out of Gabe Velarde, or is there more of this for Gabe Velarde? He's just below a point per game, 27 goals. And unlike the diminutive Rossi, he's 6'3", of course, and has some size to go as well. Right shot as well. What do you think of Velarde, Matt?
Well, what I know is he's a net front guy. What I know is he's a short area goals guy, which may well blend nicely with Rick Tocchet hockey. How much has he played the middle? Yeah, he's played more wing than middle. I know he's played center in the past. Is that a square peg round hole? I'm not sure. Does he skate well enough?
I'm still wondering if he is in that Hedl conversation of, is he truly a top 6 guy, or is he actually a great third line player?
Yeah, well, here's what I'd say is there may be a distinction there between as a winger and as a centerman, that he may very well be a top 6 winger because of his ability to score goals in difficult areas. But can he be a second line centerman where he is creating as much as he is scoring, playing the defensive side of the puck, and then again playing Rick Tocchet hockey, which, if Rick Tocchet is the coach, speed and forecheck and all of that. JT Miller, he turned 32 on Friday, faces the Canucks Saturday at Madison Square Garden. He spoke with USA Today. Quote, a lot of the season wasn't really fun, so I'm just enjoying myself right now. It's fun coming to the rink again. Aside, JT, what do you think the Canucks players are saying?
No, you got out.
Yeah, exactly.
You crawled through the tunnel out of Shawshank.
Well, but also
They're
I
still
think there's a
in
lot of them
Shawshank.
who would say it's a lot more fun coming to the rink now that that is in New York. Quote, I feel like I spent a lot of my career explaining myself, JT said. I think people that know me as a teammate and a friend and a player, they understand my game and understand that's just part of who I am. Everybody's different. So I just try to regulate the emotions. I don't want it to go away because it brings out the best in me. But if things are starting to go the other way, I have to learn how to recognize that. And that's something I think I've gotten better at, which really sort of encapsulates, Blake, the matter afoot here with the Vancouver Canucks. After the incident following the Nashville game in November, hard feelings, and JT having to learn and was likely not to learn it or apply it here in the midst of people that he had antagonized and gotten on the wrong side of, that he needed a change of scenery, that if there was a JT Miller breakout, turnaround, whatever you wanted to call it, it was almost certainly going to have to happen somewhere other than Vancouver with this coaching staff and this room of teammates. I
think in small doses, people love JT Miller, and I think JT Miller, in and out. I think people can stomach that, but he says he's trying to regulate his emotions. I think when you show up to work with him every single day and work as closely as teammates in the NHL do, I think people would say he needs to regulate those emotions a little bit more.
Yeah. Quote, I definitely come off as angry.
Yeah, dude.
People may not like that, but I don't really give a bleep what they think. So there you go.
Showing anger in talking about how he
comes off as angry.
Inception.
So JT, like, here's the, I'm doing better at regulating my emotions. Okay, great. Well, I come off as angry. Yeah, fair. I don't give a bleep what people think. So there's a dissembly there, JT.
Yeah.
Because part of the Vancouver lesson was you do actually have to care somewhat what the people you work with think. That's kind of an important part.
Well,
of
and
this
the optics clearly have an effect
growth
on him. He's affected by the optics. He's saying what he's saying because he's mildly upset about the fact that he's seen as angry. It clearly gets under his skin a little bit, but again, we're in a circle here. Doom spiral.
Yeah, you have the agency, JT.
Yeah.
Anyways, the Athletics ownership rankings. Oh boy, I'm wondering how this landed in the corporate offices of Canucks Sports and Entertainment and Aquilini Investment Group. Did you see these?
Yes.
Vancouver Canucks ownership ranks 31st out of 32 teams, ahead of only the Buffalo Sabres, with a letter grade of D+, the only D range grade. Everybody else was either in the C range, or Buffalo got an F. 4,000 readers filled out detailed surveys put out by The Athletic and were compiled into 4 ownership categories. Willingness to spend. The Canucks ranked 25th here, and this is one area where I frankly feel like they were hard done by.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Outside of the COVID year where ownership turned off the taps, you could argue an unwillingness to spend on a practice facility. I think that does have to count as a demerit against them in this category specifically. But other than that, that's been the Aquilini strength, that they have spent on the hockey product, spent on the farm as well.
It's got his management group's in trouble because they have spent to the cap every year, and for the most part have been an average to bad team. So that's actually been a problem for the team.
Yeah. So honestly, I thought that was a little harsh. Organizational stability, they rank 30th. Well, you reap what you sow there. How many coaches have we seen here? How many managers? How many presidents on the business side? Treatment of the fan base, 31st. Look no further than the terrible maroon seats. and the ticket prices and the refusal to communicate with your customers from a high corporate level, be that Michael Doyle or Francesco Aquilini. It is a flush market, a wealthy market. Canucks Sports Entertainment understands that there are a lot of people in this market with disposable income that are willing to spend it on their product, and frankly, they take some of it for granted, in my view.
Back to the willingness to spend, you mentioned the seats. Like maybe that's what people are focusing on. Not so much spend on the salary cap, spend on the organization. And there's been a bit of a stagnancy within the arena as well for some of the season ticket holders.
There were upgrades a few years ago. Like, I felt really good upgrades. Like, Sports Bar has been an absolute slam dunk. The Loge has been a great upgrade. The food has been better under Chef Robert. So seats are a big one, no doubt. But frankly, in and around the arena, I think they've done a pretty reasonable job in upgrading things.
The footprint is limiting too, right? Like,
that's the other thing. The footprint.
If you've been to Staples Center, whatever it's called now,
crypto.
Yep. You know, like, you'll never get the hallways, the mezzanines that they have. That doesn't occur. So.
No, I mean, Vancouver is limited geographical space to begin with. Rogers Arena is on a small piece of property, and so, there's not much that you can do there. And then lastly, franchise vision. The Canucks ranked 23rd. Actually, thought that one might be a little high. Because really, you can argue, have they been aspirational enough? Or is every year just a matter of trying to get in the playoffs and bring in postseason revenue? A criticism you will have no trouble finding on social media from Canucks fans.
That's all just changed, because under this ownership, they've actually been quite good. Like, they had visionary management way back in the day under the Gillis regime.
They did.
They were at the forefront of the digital conversion to websites that were creating content and all that. Like, under this same ownership, there was a moment where they were at the top of this scale, or top 10 at the very least.
And the Athletic write-up points to that, and even quotes a survey responder basically saying that the Benning era still stings here. That if you were to remove the Benning era and just judge them on the Gillis and Rutherford eras, things would be a lot better. There was some good news here in this survey for Canucks ownership. Only 5% said they have left confidence in ownership this year compared to last. Now, some of these surveys were done in advance of the trade deadline, so I do wonder how that would change. 43% reported higher confidence than last year. Of course, much of that was floated by the fantastic season the Canucks had. And then the raw numbers. Aquilini's bought the team in 2005. Since then, the Canucks ranked 23rd in the National Hockey League in wins. And, of course, there are two franchises there that are awfully new, so it's really 23 out of 30. And 20th in playoff wins since 2025. And, of course, many of those were authored in the 15-win postseason of 2011.
Yep.
The general managers are meeting in Florida, as mentioned, discussing the possibility that next season starts earlier because of the Olympics. You may remember we've become accustomed here over the last few years where Labor Day comes and goes, the next weekend comes and goes, and only the weekend thereafter are we doing even rookie camps, and then all of a sudden training camp is the weekend thereafter or later that week, and we're getting a little bit later start of the season. So it does sound like next year's NHL calendar may move up here to account for the Winter Olympics in Milano and Cortina. Of course, the season will pause for that as NHL players participate for the first time since Sochi in 2014. I was a little surprised to read that the longer overtime, the 10-minute overtime, is not a formal agenda item and not something that's getting a lot of traction with NHL GMs. And I'm surprised at that because, of course, we test drove the 10-minute overtime in the Four Nations, and that seems like the next logical step given how much fun the 3-on-3 overtime is and how well it has been received by hockey fans. But the raw numbers here, 77% of games are ended in overtime and do not continue to the shootout. Give me your 2 cents on all that.
I would be reticent to extend it much more as well. I mean, it's weird. It would be weird to have a weird number, like 7-minute overtime. Is that odd? Like, does it have to be kind of a more, 5 isn't an even number, but you know what I mean? Like it just a solid number, 5, 10 sort of thing versus an odd number. Would you add just 2 more minutes of overtime to avoid the shootout? I think I'm going to guess hockey men, quote unquote, are okay with the way that it is now, and it'll probably proceed as such.
Remember, once upon a time, hockey men didn't want the shootout at all, right?
No, totally.
It's a skills competition. So 77% is a pretty good number for me.
Pretty good, yeah.
Doubling it might make the shootout a very rare beast. But do you want the shootout to be a very rare beast? Either because A, you do believe it's a skills competition and shouldn't decide a final point, or B, you just want it to be a little more special, have a little bit more luster, right?
Yeah.
Be the rare game that gets to a shootout.
If you're a season ticket holder, you see 3 of them in a game, in a season.
Something like that. Yeah. And they're exciting. Everybody stands, right? If you're in the building for a shootout, like it's a pretty dramatic, compelling way to end a hockey game. As is 3-on-3 overtime. I'm with you. I think if we get to 10 minutes, that probably means the shootout is incredibly rare. And that might extend some of the regrouping, going back over your own center line. And you and I are in concurrence on this one, that if you do go to 10 minutes, I do think you need a rule about coming back over the center line in possession. I
plus a full 10-minute game plus the overtime. That's a 3-hour visit to the arena, which people don't want.
Now you're also starting to get on the wrong side of television, of course, that has certain windows, or at least network television. I'm sure the Amazon people don't care.
No.
But network television, which, and particularly your U.S. national deals, right? Because they usually have live programming coming up right after your game. So
the other thing I want to bring up that you may have missed too, the scheduling thing. Do you know that there's an All-Star game next year with the Olympics?
Oh my God.
And so there's actually talk that they might just pull it. They've already awarded it to the Islanders, but I mean, they've got to call.
Do not delay the season even further.
No,
pull the All-Star game. All-Star games in the 2 years when you're not doing your own international or going to the Olympics.
I thought that was a fait accompli, and then I saw a note of it. And I was like, "What?
No,
they've got an All-Star game."
Yeah, they got to keep those sponsors happy.
I guess
hobnobbing with NHL All-Stars, as a wise man once said. Have you met Scott Hartnell? Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by our friends
for those folks at home.
Yeah, that was Blake was on a rant about sponsors and meeting quote unquote all-stars when players were pulling out of the game left, right, and center, and wondered aloud what a 2-minute meeting with Philadelphia's Scott Hartnell might do for the corporate account.
For MasterCard CEO.
Yeah, exactly. The MasterCard CEO. We were thinking of not renewing our sponsorship, but man, Scott Hartnell really blew me away in those 60 seconds. Yeah. We're in.
Oh, man.
Greta Bar, it's the place to be for all the games, home and away, your minutes, steps from the stadium and the arena, pregame, postgame. Check out the great street food menu, the arcade that encircles the bar. They got weekly drink specials, 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar, the place to be. We got Cam Robinson from Elite Prospects coming up, talk all things Vancouver Canucks with him as well. And we may have to consider this, sad as this is, but if they do have a first-round pick this year, and that first-round pick is somewhere in the teens, which it would be if they missed the playoffs. We talked to him about some prospects that might fit the bill there. And speaking of prospects, Dave Hall of Canucksarmy, their fine prospects writer. We take his pulse on the big Canucks, but also the great stories that are happening down in Abbotsford, who have won 5 in a row. The future roadmap here for Tom Willander. as well as Aku Koskenvo, the young goaltending prospects. Plus, we talked some Lekkerimäki, DP, Linus Karlsson, who's back up with the big team with Dave. That's all coming up, as well as some notes about Canadians doing well abroad, Canadians doing well here at Rogers Arena in the national sport of lacrosse coming up in our final segment. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. Blake, I took a future yesterday, so why don't you lead us off? And I anticipate you're going on the Canucks game.
I'm going inside the Canucks game, if you will. Yes, taking on a fabulous Jets team, of course, full of offense, which means something from the Vancouver Canucks is imperative, and it's going to fall to one guy and one guy only, and that is Quinn Hughes. And you're going to need 2 points out of Quinn Hughes tonight. He's going to need to create. I don't know if you can lean on him to score goals like he has been this season, but you need him to create 2 points out of Quinn Hughes tonight. It gets a good number, actually, plus 290. I'm okay with that number, plus 290 on 2 points for Quinn Hughes.
You may remember when last we saw Kyle Connor, he was scoring a first period hat trick against the Vancouver Canucks. Now, I'm not going to get greedy here, because I did consider Kyle Connor on a multi-point evening or a multi-goal evening. But plus 135 as an anytime goal scorer, it's not the greatest odds, but this is one of the best scorers in the NHL, and he has had success against the Canucks. So give me Connor to score tonight at plus 135. Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner. Every face-off, hat trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, and every suspenseful minute in between. Amazing. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app and use code NATION to get in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Cam Robinson coming up next. Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center.
And the segment brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers, who want to remind you what life is like in the HOV lane just all the time. You don't have to wait for that second person to join you. Anytime you want, you live in the HOV lane. When you're driving a BZ4X, the newest electric vehicle in the electric lineup from Toyota, they've been doing it for decades, folks. They know how to do it. Go take one for a test drive. Matt and I did. I was the driver, of course. Matt was taking notes. The minute foot hit the pedal, that thing went. It's a lot of fun to drive. Go visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer today, or shop toyota.ca and find out more about the BZ4X. You can get up to $6,500 in rebates and incentives right now as well, and you can finance a 2025 from 3.29% APR for 36 months. Shop toyota.ca.
Cam Robinson is the content director and director of film scouting for Elite Prospects. He joins us on Tuesdays from his abode on Vancouver Island. How we doing?
Doing well. I mean, this is it, right? We're officially in the stretch drive, right? 15 games left on the season. Everything's ramping up. Let's have some fun with it. Yeah,
we are. I don't think the Canucks know about that, but we are.
Yeah,
the memo hasn't
boy, they better know
right?
soon here. Let's start with the game tonight, Cam. So tough opponent, best in the league, Winnipeg Jets. Connor Hellebuck. How do you go about playing the Jets? How do you attack the Jets? What do you got to be worried about, and how do you feel about the game tonight?
Oh boy, I mean, like they are deep, they can score, they can defend, and they've got the best goaltender in the world. I mean, it is definitely a tough matchup, but obviously they are not indestructible. You have to limit chances, you have to limit their access to the inside, and you have to get to the inside. You have to get in Connor Hellebuck's kitchen. especially with a team that is struggling to score goals at a rapid rate here at dirty goals, right? Get in there, bang, muck it up, and get him however he can. Hopefully get in his head a little bit, get in his kitchen, and get him off his game, as difficult as that can be to do. But they got to find a way to, at least pull a point out tonight, right? Like you come out 0-4 tonight, and you're starting to dig yourself a little bit of hole with 15 games left on the schedule, and like 2/3 of them are against playoff teams, right? They do not have an easy schedule up ahead here, so they have to find ways to get points against these teams that are ahead of them in the standings,
including this big 6-game roadie that is coming up. St. Louis, Calgary, Utah, they're all in action tonight. What's your confidence level right now, Cam, in terms of the Canucks making the playoffs?
Like on paper and how well this team performed last year and, the playoff run, it's like I feel like of those teams, they should be best situated to take that final wild card spot. But I mean, obviously no more JT Miller, Philip Hedl, big question mark. Is he there? That center depth is non-playoff center depth at this point. Thatcher Demko, Lankinen's been good, but he's not a Vezina level goalie. So my gut tells me I'm not that confident. I mean, I think they got 29 or 30% odds to get in at this point. I think that's fair. I think that it's kind of like it's a legitimate 4-horse race. And something about Calgary and having Dustin Wolf back there, and they're kind of this plucky team that wasn't supposed to be there. Sometimes they're the ones that end up sneaking it out versus the team that had the higher expectations and haven't met them. But we'll just have to see. It's really like they have the talent in that dressing room to get it done. So I think that there's still a reasonable chance here.
And theoretically, they don't score a lot of goals, but it just seems on their resume, they have guys that have scored goals at the very least. Like I don't know what Canucks fans should be hoping for here with regards to who's going to score goals. How do they do it? Even with Hedl, but now especially Cam with no Philip Hedl, how do they score goals? We can criticize Rick Tocchet all we want, but how are they supposed to score goals?
It's obviously a big issue, right? And you can point at Brock Boeser and be like, man, that guy is burning money off of his next ticket, right? He's got to figure it out. But at the same time, it's like he needs someone to work with. We know that he's not a play driver. He's a finisher. He needs to find the soft ice and get the puck in a good spot and finish it off, right? Pettersson's been playing much better lately. That's great. That's got to keep going. But you can't count on Poos Suter to be scoring for you every night, right? You can't count on some of these depth guys to do it. Obviously, you need that. They're going to need that now. They need Dakota Joshua, need Connor Garland. They need these guys to find the back of the net and do it on a fairly consistent basis. They need a couple guys to get hot. And it's a tall ask for some of these players that aren't natural goal scorers. But you have to look at Brock Boeser, who's really struggled since Miller's gone. There was all that noise at the deadline, and that's justifiable that, maybe that was impacting his play, but that's over now. He's here for the rest of the season. It's like, put up or shut up time, Brock. You gotta find ways to impact the game in a positive way, and that is scoring goals. He has to score goals.
And too much on Lekkermaki to expect offense there at this point, right?
Well, I mean, if you're going to play him in right now he's seeing 10 or fewer minutes a night from the fourth line. Yeah, he's seeing, 20% of the second power play unit time there at the end of it. But that unit has, it's lacking skill. It's lacking cohesiveness. It's not generating much. So that's a big question. Like, what's the plan with this kid? Like, he's 20 years old. He was having a really strong year in the AHL. You bring him up now, you're playing him very few minutes. You're not putting him in offensive situations. Like, he's barely getting a shot per game. Like, he almost has as many hits as he has shots. That's not the type of player you were bringing up to ignite offense. That's not Lekkermaki's job. So I do question, what is the plan with him right now up here? But if you want him to be a catalyst that is going to generate offense, you better put him up with some players who can create offense with him. Because again, you can't expect him to be a play driver seeing 8 minutes a night on the fourth line.
Cam, just getting back to center ice if they have to go without Hedl here. So your Pettersson, your Suter, your Bluger, and your some combination of Nils Oman or maybe Atu Ratu or Max Sasson. How do you have to play if those are the four centers you stack on a nightly basis?
Well, I guess that's Rick Tocchet's system that's coming into play there. It's got to shut him down. Like he said the other day that, I don't think we have the team that can open it up. And at this point, they don't have the horses to open it up. And so it has to be, 2-1 hockey, 3-2 hockey, suffocating defense, and then take advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves. And you have to trust that some of your guys, your Petterssons, your Boesers, your Hughes, are going to be able to finish off those plays when they get their opportunities. And if they don't, you're not going to win. But that's basically the avenue for success for this team right now.
So on the coach, First of all, do you think he's a fit? Do you think he's a fit with the personnel group they have right now when everyone is healthy?
Yes, I do. I think he's well respected. I think he does have a good mind for the game and how to handle some of the personalities in the room. You just wonder if he's able to maximize the offensive skill of some of his players. And we've seen that in his other stops before, right? Clayton Keller really struggled under him and has exploded away from him. Pettersson has had his moments with Tocchet, but it's been generally, we could call that a bit of a struggle too. So if he's the coach for this team and the roster that's constructed as of today, I think he probably is the right man for the job, because he's going to have to, maximize all that suffocating two-way style, and then, hope for that quick power play that they can generate something and finish it off, or a goal off the rush or something like that on a bad turnover. But if their plan is to go out and, take a huge cut and try to sign a guy like Mitch Marner or a Nick Ehlers or something, and bring in some more offensive talent that you're really going to have to kind of let run, I'm not sure. Is that the guy that's going to be able to maximize and let those guys kind of run around and get their 90, 100, 110 points or something like that?
So let's ask you the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Sorry, Blake. In that vein, what should the Canucks do with Tocchet? Fire him, exercise the option, sign him to an extension, or do you want to see how this season plays out before making the call?
What I think they should do is, at this point in time too, let's just see how these final 15 games go. And if they do get into the playoffs, let's see how that goes as well, because they do have time to make a decision on him. And I think that time has been created by Rick. I think that if it was up to the brass, he would have already been extended. I think that they would like to keep him around. I think Tocchet is probably more keeping his options open than anyone else. But if it's me, yes, I would wait and see, because if the wheels fall off, it's like, maybe you look elsewhere. Maybe it's just not a fit for both parties moving forward here. If he can dig them and they can dig deep and they can get into the playoffs, and maybe they can even just push deep into round one, right? Make it a contest here against one of the top teams. Then maybe that's enough to justify, either exercising the option or extending him on a 2 or 3 year term. But, this guy won the Jack Adams. Like, if he goes to free agency, there's going to be teams lining up to pay him, big money for a long term. And maybe he's frustrated with what's happened all season in Vancouver. It's been a difficult year. I'm sure it's been difficult on him too. So I do believe that he's more keeping his option open than anybody else in the organization.
The only thing that has people somewhat placated and confident and comfortable to a degree is the defense core. But there's still some development there. Mancini and Elias Pettersson are not finished products, obviously. So the question is, should Elias Pettersson be in the lineup every single night?
No, I don't think so. I think Derek Forbert's been really strong lately. The big shot blocks, he's been stepping up. He's a big guy, he's physical. He's Ian Cole at a cheaper price, and he's been doing well at the job lately. And I think that he's earned the right to be in the lineup on that left side. But I love what Pettersson has accomplished this year as a 20-year-old kid, first year in North America as a pro. Had pro experience in Sweden, but it's a different game over here. Stepping up. He loves to lower the boom. He makes smart plays with the puck. It's great. Long term, he's going to be a really strong player for them. But I think at this point, it's okay to have him kind of come in and out of the lineup, especially after he took that whack and they didn't know, was it the flu, was it a concussion? Give him a little bit of time to see how he's feeling. And then if somebody gets hurt or somebody struggles or slips, boom, you pop him back in and you let him run. And if and then he struggles a little bit, then you pop him back out. I think that's totally fine if you want to handle him with kid gloves, if you want to say.
The rest of the D, though, do you like the way he's handling Mancini and the substitution of forward? The cycle seems about appropriate.
Yeah, I think it's been just fine. Yeah, and like you said, that at this point, and it's funny to say this out loud after all the conversations we had earlier in the year, is that somehow the defense core is now their position of strength, and so maybe they were listening as we were yelling, "Go get another right shot D, go get some help." They need some help back there, and they got some help. So
the only problem is it came at the complete expense of the center ice position. Complete expense.
Yeah, yes. And it's funny, like we have certain weekly guests for whom the conversation circles back. And with Cam, it's been the defense. With John Shannon, it's been his confidence level in the Vancouver Canucks. One thing we should say, Cam, about that right side of the defense, Tyler Myers has been pretty damn good here of late. Like, we've got to give Tyler Myers his flowers. Sure. When he makes mistakes, they are allowed mistakes, but there have been so many nights this year where we're coming out of the game either not talking about Tyler Myers, which is a good thing, or lauding him for something, including a recent run of points since the formations.
He's been very good. And, he was good in the playoffs last year too. Like when he was making the big price tag, it was an easy scapegoat, especially because, like you said, those big, loud mistakes would often be costly. But, he is so large. He's physical. He can push guys back. He can clear that net front. He can bang a little bit too. It's like he brings a lot of elements that they don't necessarily pop when you're watching, but they're really impactful for that blue line. And this year he has been highly consistent and at a lower price tag. So it's easier to swallow when he does make those mistakes. And, at his age too, it's like, he kind of blew that one. But for the most part, he has been very, very good. And I think that was a smart move on their part to extend him and keep him around. And it's really paid off. He's provided nice depth. And now he's in a position where he should be, right? He shouldn't be eating 21 minutes a night or anything like that. At this point in his career, lower those minutes, put him in situations against, not the first line or something like that, and he can handle his business really, really well.
Okay, buddy. I have found myself on Tankathon recently. Executing some...
Feeling low, are you?
Well, I'm just preparing for all outcomes here, Blake. And of course, one of those outcomes is they crater from here. And you're looking at a first-round draft pick. Now, I know some will say, they're not using that first-round draft pick. And I don't disagree. I think there's a pretty fair chance that they move this year's first-round draft pick. But Cam, this is your wheelhouse. Let's say they are drafting somewhere between 12 and 18. What sort of player do you think they can get? And particularly center iceman, because as we've covered, they've sort of vacated that position at the NHL level and don't have a lot coming in the minors either.
No, I mean, how much time do we have? I could riff on a whole bunch of these guys. So in that kind of range, it's going to be a really interesting range if that's where they are in that, 12 to 15, 18, whatever. Center ice, Carter Bear. I don't know if you guys saw recently, one of my favorite players in this class. He already ripped up 40 plus goals in 50 odd games in the West there forever. One of the top teams in the CHL. Last rated Achilles. I reported on that he's going to need surgery. It's going to take him out for the rest of the year. That's going to drop his stock. For my money, that's a top 10 pick. So we'll see how far, Peyton Krebs had a similar injury in his draft year, fell all the way to 17. We'll see where Carter Bear goes. But, he's a power pivot with, a hard skill, a great shot. Never looks good drafting a guy and he comes up on stage with crutches. You don't like that. Vancouver's been through that before. But if he's there, if they end up picking in the late teens or something like that, he's someone that I would be really, really looking at. We'll see where, if we can get some more information on this injury and how long the timeline is. But I love Carter Barron. I think that that's an opportunity for a team now to get a really good player at a discount price. A kid like Brady Martin, he's only 6 foot, right-handed center though, but this kid quite literally has farm boy strength because he's from a farm and he hits like a truck. He has a load to handle. You can just it's so easy to see him being like a third line center, like a matchup nightmare type of guy. But I do think that there's top 6 skill there as well. His game is his offense is predicated on his pace and his speed. And so he's going to need to use that with his handles more frequently as he moves up if he wants to have kind of that top 6 skill. But
I've heard
a couple other players.
Points. I've heard he
can milk them. There you go.
Yeah.
Look at that. It writes itself. But looking outside of the middle of the ice too, what about a kid like Josh Ravensbergen? 6'5", 6'6" stopper. Do they have that next guy in the pipeline? People don't love it when a team takes a goalie in the first round, but it's not sexy often, but man, it can sometimes really, really pay off for you. You look at Jake Ottinger, Andrei Vasilevsky. This kid has potentially elite stuff. He's a North fan kid. He's a great kid. He's a really, really a genuine human being. I think he's going to be a stud. On the blue line, I've brought him up before, Keishon Aitchison. For me, he's kind of like Bieksa 2.0 on the left side. 6'1", but he's ferocious. He just set an all-time goal record for the Barrie Colts here. He's got the 7th most goals ever by a draft-eligible defenseman in the OHL. Scores big goals, OT winners, game winners, fights, hits. He's a lot of fun. Another one who you just has this infectious personality. And then finally, I'd say Lyndon Lukovic, 6'4" winger, sniper, power. On pure skill alone, I could make an argument that he's top 5 in this draft, but he's probably going to go in that 10 to 15 range, 10 to 17 range. So he's a really interesting one, that a guy that you could be that could be a 30-goal scorer in the league one day.
One guy you didn't mention, and I think possibly because he has played his way into the top 10. The big right shot centerman from Brantford, Jake O'Brien, Cam, is he like now a top 10 guy? Like, is there very little chance that he's going to be in the Canucks range?
Yeah, I mean, I've got him at number 5. I might even bump him up to number 4 at some point here. And like, I tweeted the other day that he's my dark horse to slip into that kind of top 5 range. And I had 2 different teams text me. One said, "Get out of my head. Why do you how do you know what I'm thinking?" And the other one goes, "You might even be underselling him here." So he's got a lot of juice, I think. I will say that neither of those teams are picking in the top 5 this year, though. So maybe there is a chance. But no, he's so talented. He's got a little Pettersson in him. Like he's kind of undersized, like physically with the muscle mass, but he got that lanky frame, but like unbelievable handles and like sublime vision. Just destroys on the power play there too, right? Nick Lardis has got 70 goals, and like he can take O'Brien out for a couple of dinners for a few of those goals for sure. So I think he will be out of Vancouver's range unless something really dramatic happens where they fall out and then they win a lottery spot or something like that.
You have to be more specific when you say he's got a little Pettersson in him as to whether or not that is a compliment, whether that is...
Oh, boy.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing, Blake, I'm looking at some of the size of these kids. McQueen, 6'5", Murtak, the Seattle
6'6".
defenseman, 6, Smith, 6'3", Lakovic, you mentioned, 6'4".
Some big boys.
Have some wingspan on the podium again
That's what
this
you like
year.
to see.
Cam, you're the best. Thank you for this, my friend. We'll catch up next week.
Thanks, all. Talk soon.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
It's Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. And if you're looking for diamonds, and who isn't looking for diamonds? Ben Moss, proudly Canadian-owned and operated with a history dating back more than 100 years. They have got a large selection. Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. They got mine diamonds with payment plans to suit your need. Committed to customer satisfaction. They've got 5 locations in British Columbia. We invite you to check the Coquitlam Center. For more information, go to benmoss.com. Ben Moss, for the love of jewelry. It has been too long since we have talked to our buddy Dave Hall of Canucksarmy, who does such a fantastic job tracking the Abbotsford Canucks and Canucks prospects, and there is plenty to talk to on his file, and he joins us now from his abode on Vancouver Island. How are you, Dave? Long time no speak.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Tis the season, prospect stuff, playoff pushes. It's that time.
It's getting real. Well, let's start with the big team then. First of all, what's your confidence level here, buddy, with 15 to go in the schedule that looms for the Vancouver Canucks to make the playoffs?
Yeah, I'd say it's about 50-50. I mean, I heard a couple days ago that apparently they have the quote unquote easiest schedule out of all the teams pushing, but looking at their schedule, they got the Winnipeg Jets twice. They've got the Golden Knights twice. They've got the Avs, the Stars. I mean, they're going to have their work cut out for them to make it. But, they're looking good. I mean, and then obviously they lose the game to Utah, who's in direct competition with them. So it's going to be a grind. It always comes down to this. But I'd say, I don't know, I'm putting out 50-50 right now.
And they do it down a center with Filipino on the shelf for an indeterminate amount of time. And they call up Linus Karlsson from Abby to try and fill some of that forward void. He has had a marvelous AHL season. Is he the quintessential quad A player, though, that it's just not that offense just won't translate to the National Hockey League? Because we haven't really seen many glimpses of that. He seems more offensively orientated than even like a Nils Oman, who is actually performed pretty well and produced pretty well at the AHL level himself. But do you think there is more from Linus Karlsson at the NHL level?
No, I think he is what he is. I think you're going to get what we expect, and that's a gritty player that players hate to play against. Don't get it twisted. Players in the AHL hate playing against Linus Karlsson, and that's just what he brings. If you look at his heat map for all the goals that he scored, he's obviously the all-time franchise leading scorer for Abbotsford. When you look at his heat map of the goals, they're all coming from the exact same spot, and that's right in front of the net. He's a grind, meat and potatoes type of player. yeah, you might get the occasional production from him at the NHL level, but I think that's what you're getting. But I think for what they need right now, I mean, we look at how they've been, utilizing Lekharimaki, and they obviously just want some bottom six help. So I think Karlsson's the perfect plug-in player for that. But I think that's probably what you can expect, as we've seen from him already at the NHL level. So I was a little surprised to see that it was Linus Karlsson, not because he doesn't deserve the call-up, but I thought that they definitely do need some help down the middle, and there is a player that's playing pretty well down there that is pretty good in the face-off dot that could have helped with that. So,
who's that, Dave? Because I'm on the same wavelength as you. I've been wondering, are they better off with Ratu or Sasson in the middle on the fourth line, given the need for goals right now?
Yeah, I think it could be either. Both are clicking. Like Abbotsford is clicking on all cylinders right now. And so I think it could have been either. I love Max Hasson's speed, which is obviously something you're not going to get with Ratu. But I think Ratu has probably garnered he's probably the guy I would have picked, only because he is producing now, which is what we like to see. He's now Abbotsford's leading goal scorer. He's an absolute ace in the face-off, whether you're on the right or left side. And let's be real, that is something that the Canucks need right now, is some solid face-off guys. So I think push comes to shove, I think he was probably my guy to come up. I always, me, I love me some Max Hasson, and I wouldn't have, thought otherwise if they called him up, but I think Ratu was probably the guy, especially since there is a good chance that he's probably going to be pushing for a permanent spot next year. So it's a good opportunity for him to kind of come in and see what he's got the second time around this season. So it is what it is. Obviously, I believe I saw it was on an emergency basis, so we'll see how they utilize Karlsson. But I just thought Ratu was probably going to be the guy. But
well, another guy who could drop into this lineup shortly is Tom Willander, the first-round pick of a couple of years ago at Boston University, a right-shot defenseman. They have a big Hockey East semifinal game against the University of Connecticut Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, Dave. But take me through the possibilities here with Tom Willander in terms of when his season may come to an end.
Yeah, it was a big mystery last week. I saw a lot of people on X talking about they were kind of hoping that they'd lose over the weekend so that they could potentially have him this week. That was never going to be a thing. If you go to Canucksarmy, I did have, just because in light of that, I did write a bit of a quote unquote Tom Willander roadmap. Long story short, there was no way that he was going to be signing this year, only because Boston University was just good enough to qualify for the national tournament. So regardless of the outcome last weekend, Thursday, or if they, win or not on Friday, he's going to be in that regional tournament. So best case scenario for those on team get Willander to Vancouver, we're looking probably around an April 1st, and that would be BU goes to the regionals and loses their single elimination game, which will be either the 28th or the 29th, I believe. So anytime after that, he's pretty much ready to pack his bags and come to the Fraser Valley or Vancouver, whoever they decide to go to. If they do win in those regionals, my apologies, that does get extended to mid-April. So the Frozen Four will happen on April 11th and 12th. So it'll be one of those dates. So.
Has his season been exactly what you would have wanted? Would you have wanted something a little more in any category?
There's been a lot of areas that he's very much improved. Things like his, just puck decision making, even the play with the puck, he's gotten a lot better. And for my money, I think he's had a fantastic season. I guess, there are probably people that would look at the stats and probably would like to see a little bit more from, such a hyped up prospect. But I think if you have the expectations that you should for Willander, and that's, probably a second pair guy that's, going to be a shutdown defenseman that can play on your penalty kill, I think he's been fantastic. Excuse me. He's been fantastic. He's been eating up minutes, although he's not the top go-to guy, thanks to another Hudson. He's been their shutdown guy. And I just think, for what it's worth, I think he's had a terrific season.
Abbotsford, as you mentioned, is really going right now, Dave. 5 in a row. They've moved into fourth place in the Pacific Division. What's fueling all this?
Yeah, and it's come at a good time, too. They had a bit of a rough end to February. So for a while there, they were clutching and grabbing at that 7th and final spot in the Pacific Division. And they've come in red hot for March, which has really helped them out. Not only are they in 4th spot, but they're only 3 points out of 2nd spot. So we've got a home ice advantage, it's a good possibility here. So it's been a nice collective effort from everyone, to be honest. We've got all the forwards are helping, whether it's Max Hassan, Sammy Blais, who's on an AHL contract. He's looked fantastic. Recently acquired Jujhar Khaira. He's got points in 3 of the 4. We mentioned already, Atu Ratu and Linus Karlsson are both firing. But they're also getting some solid goaltending. Tolopilo just made 30 saves for his first shutout. Ty Young, the rookie sensation, Mr. Young, he's come out of nowhere relatively, and he's been playing lights out. So it's kind of just been a collective effort where we're finally seeing that structure that Manny Malhotra has kind of been preaching all season long. It's finally coming together, and we're kind of just seeing it come from everywhere right now.
What do you make of the graduates up at the NHL level? Guys like Lekromaki and DPD, for that matter, have been in and out of the lineup. Do you think they'd be better served coming back down to help out that Abby team, or do they need these cups of coffee right now?
Yeah, I think both, two different situations, completely different situations. I think the reason why I don't mind Pettersson being up there and, gaining all that gaining all that experience is because I think he's being put in a position where that's where he's going to be playing most of his career. He might be able to go up to that second pair, which is great, but I think he's going to be that shutdown third line, second pair guy that, you kind of don't really notice on a night to night basis, but he's just doing all the right things. And so I love that he's up, and at this point they didn't paper him down. So he's going to be up at Vancouver for the remainder of the season. But when it comes to Lekkerimäki, and this is no secret, if you've been following me, I'm all for him being in Vancouver. Obviously, that's the goal. We want him thriving in Vancouver. But it's a situational thing. We know that Lekkerimäki thrives in a top 6 shooting, offensive role. And so if you're not going to play him in that role, that's fine. I just don't see the need of having him up for 3 weeks when he's at the AHL level. He's top line everything. He's shooting on a whim. He's scoring goals at a ridiculous clip and just gaining that confidence, right? He's only 20 years old. For me, I just don't see when there's perfectly viable options, as we've seen with Linus Karlsson being called up today, and about 4 other perfectly fine options in Abbotsford. I just don't see the point of having him play 8 minutes a night, 12 minutes a night at most, when he could be playing 20 minutes a night, scoring at will at the AHL level, just for this year, right?
Yeah.
Lastly, from me, Dave, we mentioned this kid yesterday, Aku Koskenvuo, the goaltending prospect, 5th rounder from 2021. He just finished his junior season at Harvard University. He was the guy in the playoffs for them. He's improved the goals against and the save percentage in every year there at Harvard. What are you thinking here? Is this a player they're going to sign for next year with an amateur tryout? What's the path forward here for the Canucks with this goaltending prospect?
Yeah, first of all, I was very happy to see him get the nod. It's been a bit of an up and down season. He actually lost the net to a freshman midway through the year, so it was a bit of a weird season. This was supposed to be the year where he kind of takes that starting role by the horns and goes with it. But it was nice to see him not only get the start but play extremely well. He was their backbone in that entire 3-game series. Nearly almost got it for them, but Harvard came up just short. But he's the one prospect where I can't really get a feel for what's going to happen. I've checked in with quite a few sources, and it has been a little quiet, and respectively so. If you look at the goaltending system, it's a bit convoluted right now. Who knows what's happening. We've got Thatcher Demko, potentially coming back, but maybe not. We've got Silovs kind of waiting. He's obviously that guy going up and down, and so when Thatcher does come back, Silovs comes down. What happens to Ty Young? He gets dropped down to Kalamazoo probably, even though he's been playing lights out. So it is a bit of a crowded crease. But with that said, I think he has shown enough where I think you probably want to get him inside and get some pro reps in him, and just get some pro experience and the coaching staff. I mean, being an NCAA netminder is a little bit tricky when you don't even really get any of that hands-on experience, right? Like you don't get to come to any of the training camps. You don't get to do any of that fun stuff and really get that, get to soak in that one-on-one time. So I think at the very least, just being able to kind of work hand in hand with the Vancouver Canucks system is probably beneficial. So whether that's a pro contract and he goes down to Kalamazoo perhaps and rides out the rest of the season remains to be seen. But there is also a possibility that he looks and it's just too crowded.
Yeah. So if he goes back to school, the Canucks still control his rights until August of next summer. And I mean, could have a Harvard degree when it's all said and done, which has got some value
that useful?
as well.
Is that useful?
Yeah, maybe not in today's America, but there was a time, Blake. Would he be the starter going back, or do you think they would want to lean on this young freshman or somebody else? Like, would he be welcome back there to be a full-fledged starting goaltender?
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, Ben Sherrod, I believe that's how you say his name, so I apologize. But he's had a pretty good season as a freshman, so there is that chance that they could be looking at him. But the nice thing about the NCAA is there's that transfer portal now. So he could, in theory, just look at all of his options, and that includes Vancouver, realize that it's a pretty crowded system, which it is, and just decide to go try to be that guy at some other school. With that said, Tolopilo is an unrestricted free agent this summer, so who knows what happens with his contract. His play has slipped a little bit this year, and Tai Young is pressing for that spot as well. Patera is still very much on the sidelines. Not much updates coming out of what's happened with him, so it's crowded. So there's a very good chance that he just says, you know what, I'm going to go test the transfer portal. I'm going to go be the number one guy somewhere, and maybe we'll check back this time next year.
That's a young tandem if they go Young and Koskinen.
Exactly.
My goodness. But Tolopilo's been good, but has he been good enough to? He's getting on in years.
Yep.
You know, what is he ultimately? They have.
Yeah, he's not a spring chicken. He's 24 years old, almost 25 now. So it's crowded.
Yeah.
Coming off the shutout, though, 1-0 shutout for Big Nikita. As part of this Abby winning streak. Dave, awesome stuff. You always make us smarter on Canucks prospects. So I appreciate this. Keep up the fine work at Canucksarmy. Please go check Dave out and all his work. You can find him on X at Dave Hall 1289. Appreciate this. Great catching up, Dave.
Yeah, not quite as smart as Aku Koskinen, Mr. Harvard, but I appreciate it.
No one in this room is.
Thanks, guys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So Carson Price from the historic Wall Center, where if you have your tickets to the big game, why not make it a full experience? Stay downtown here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Carson Price rates. Some blackout dates apply based on availability.
You know, they traded away the center that had the chant at the arena. Maybe we can get hockey fans to start chanting SNP, GNT, S. It's got a great ring to it. I know it's a bit of a non sequitur at a hockey game, but it might just take off because that's how good it is. From Resurrection Spirits, S&P Gin is here. It's made in East Van using BC ingredients, a lot of character, all the depth of flavor that you'd expect out of a really great gin. Use the code S&P to give it a little taste test. You get $5 off. Check it out at resurrectionspirits.ca, and it's for a limited time. We're making a bunch of bottles. Once they're gone, they are gone. Check it out. Get your gin so you can have an S&P G&T. Resurrection Spirits.
GNT.
Right?
A lot of syllables there. Yeah, a lot of syllables. It's not quite GNT. Defender Tristan Blackman, midfielder Sebastian Berhalter, and head coach Jesper Sorensen, all named to the MLS team of the match day. I didn't realize they were doing coaches. And Berhalter, Blackman, not names you would see on this team in years past. So just speaks to how great the Whitecaps have been and all the accolades that are coming their way at 4-0. We missed you yesterday, but we had Jaden Nelson on. How about this Cap story, Blake?
It's amazing, and you know, for them to do all of this, go out on the road, and FC Dallas is not going to be a juggernaut, I don't think, but with the talent they brought in, like Musa and Acosta are two of the best players in the league, and they dominated the team for 60, 70 minutes. They were the better team on the pitch. The depth, you know, those two guys getting the nods for team of the match day, that's what's saving the Caps right now, is they're getting players down the lineup, helping out. Now they're getting a real test this weekend with all the departures, of course, due to the national team. Let me put this bug in your ear, though. Okay. Emmanuel Sabi, the Liga player, is expected to integrate back into training this week. They're marking him down as questionable, but you have to think, if things go well at training, might they be tempted, and this is rare coming back from an injury, to throw a guy into the starting lineup? But they are thin, especially on the wide players. Like, do you have to try again. You have to see. You're going to use all the information you have this week at training, but if there's no stop signs there, Nelson on one flank, Sabby on the other, and you are right as rain, and you really mitigate a lot of the question marks because of all these national team calls.
Well, so I'll answer your question by saying this. They had to turn to rookie super draft pick Tate Johnson, who looked fine.
Totally fine.
So why not throw this kid Sabby? I mean, he's got the more professional experience, right? He's a League One player. So throw him in there. If you can't go the full 90, make your switch. And you mentioned the players who are gone. Andres Cubas called up to the Paraguayan national team. They have World Cup qualifiers this week against Chile and Colombia. We mentioned yesterday Brian White with Team USA, Ali Ahmed with the Canadians. And good news on that, Canada-Mexico will be broadcast on TSN Thursday, and potentially the final, likely against the United States on Sunday from SoFi Stadium.
Luke Weilman on the call, we should mention. People have been looking for that.
Is it just Kubas, White, and Ahmed, or am I missing anybody who's away on international duty?
No, you are missing one player. We'll get it before the end of the segment, but there is somebody else.
A couple of things I meant to get to yesterday. Forgive me. So early omissions here. Vancouver Warriors, a 13-8 win over the Toronto Rock Friday at Rogers Arena in goaltender Christian Del Bianco's debut. This is the 2023 NLL MVP. The Warriors traded 3 draft picks and a roster player to Calgary to get him, and all he did was make 49 saves in his debut. Incredible. The pride of Coquitlam. They've got the Georgia Swarm in town Saturday at Rogers Arena. The Warriors now just a half game back of the playoffs with the game in hand against the Calgary Wranglers, who they're chasing. So our buddies Teddy Jenner, Brad Challoner said, look, this team could really use offense, but if you can't add that piece, go on out and get somebody who's no worse than the second best netminder on the planet, a local guy who wanted to be here, and see if you can beat teams by preventing goals. They did just that on Friday. So we might be seeing finally a turn of fortunes for the Vancouver Warriors in the National Lacrosse League. It has been far too long since that team has made any kind of ripple in the market.
You just love it when these big moves pay off and it goes exactly according to plan, right? So Pedro Vite, by the way, is the other guy. Did you mention Vite?
I did not mention Vite.
There you go. Yep.
So missing him as well. And also wanted to mention this. It was a huge weekend for Canadian and British Columbian ski crossers here on home soil. Cultus Lake's Reese Howden, he won gold on Friday, silver on Saturday. Canadians claim 6 of 12 podium spots. This is at the only Canadian stop on the World Cup Tour in Collingwood, Ontario. Windermere's Courtney Hofos won silver on the women's side. Howden has won 5 times this year. He's a close second in the men's race for the overall title. The finale is next week in Sweden. And Cranbrook's India Sherritt, she fell out of top spot on the women's side of the bracket by finishing 5th and 9th, but she also has a chance to take the women's overall title this weekend. So we could have 2 Canadians crowned world overall champions this year in ski cross.
And when you consider the Alpine teams too, Matt, and of course Michael Kingsbury continues to do what he's doing, like the slopes are going to be pretty productive, I think, next year at the Olympics.
Absolutely,
it's ramping up perfectly.
Absolutely, Canadian skiing's back. Jack Crawford and Cam Alexander of Whistler and what they did at Kitzbühel this year. There are 20 Canadians apiece in both the men's and the women's NCAA tournaments that get going this week. Now, on the men's side, it's only one British Columbian forward, Liam McChesney of High Point. He's from Prince Rupert, but there are some Canadian stories to watch there. Have you heard of Wofford center Kyle Filowich? He's from Winnipeg. He shoots free throws underhanded, Blake. So if they offer an upset, be assured he is going to be a story. Gonzaga point guard Ryan Nembhard, he led the nation in assists. He will likely join his brother Andrew in the NBA next year. Illinois wing Will Riley was the Big Ten Sixth Man of the Year. He's a really athletic kid. He's very much improved here late in the season. He could even be a late lottery pick in the NBA draft. And then on the women's side, 4 British Columbians, 3 of them from Vancouver. Izzy Forsyth, she's a guard at the University of San Diego. She went to Semiahmoo. Vancouver's Emily Howard is a center at Liberty. Vancouver's Mara Dykstra, a forward at Montana State. She attended Churchill here. And then Chilliwack's Malia Lenz. She's a guard at Vermont, went to Abbotsford Senior Secondary. So best of luck to all of them as the NCAA tournaments get going. And sticking with hoops, Blake, Tyler Myers' brother, Quentin Grimes, have you seen what he's done since the trade to the Philadelphia 76ers? He scored 20-plus points in 6 of his last 7 games, including a career-high 46 last night against the Houston Rockets. He is averaging more than 21 points per game since being traded from Dallas to Philly, as if the Mavs GM, Nico Harrison, didn't have enough of a headache with Luka going to the Lakers. He moved what he thought was a rotation player who's turned into a big-time scorer.
How old is Quentin Grimes now?
Boy, some of these NBA players are a lot younger than you think because they come in at very young ages. Let me see how old. He's 24 years old.
Okay, so he's still developing to some degree. I mean,
yeah,
you never know if this is like a Jeremy Lin sort of hot streak, like crazy hot streak that just dies off, or if he's actually developing into something new. We'll see.
Yeah, and look, like a lot of NBA guys, he's bounced around. He's been with the Knicks, the Pistons, the Mavericks, and now Philadelphia in just, 4 seasons in the league. And if you don't know the story there, Tyler Myers' mother remarried, and this is her son with her second husband, grew up in Texas. And, he's tall too, although not as tall as his brother. He's only 6'4". I say that in basketball only. And did you see what happened at the Knicks game last night?
No.
Tracy Morgan, the comedian of SNL fame, wheelchaired out of the Garden after he vomited on the floor while sitting courtside. I hope everything is okay there. We had Tracy Morgan on the show once, Blake. You may remember.
Yeah. Did we though, Matt?
It did not. It did not go well. It's almost like he didn't want to do the interview. He was promoting a show he was having here in Vancouver, and a few weeks later, actually, he had his
big
car accident. Yeah. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Monday. What is the main reason behind the Canucks' offensive struggles? Blake, the 3 options here were a lack of personnel, lack of execution, coach's system. What won the poll?
I'll say lack of personnel.
It did. Percentage?
55.
56. Very good. Lack of execution and coach's system. Each got 22%. Talhallam, Canucks only have about 3 to 4 players that can play top line minutes and produce. The rest are third and fourth liners. We'll consider that a vote for lack of personnel. Stephen will consider this a vote for lack of chemistry. The answer is chemistry. Putting your 6 players in the top 6 rarely works. You need a guy driving the net hard. Let the skill players find some seams or open shots and scoring positions. Höglander and Pettersson have chemistry every shift. And then Chris says it's the coach's system. All you have to do is look back at his time in Tampa and especially in Arizona. All his teams struggle to score goals. 0 offensive creativity.
Well, I'm glad that all the options had good numbers to them because the truth is this is all true. I think the correct one is the major part of it, but it's all true, all of it.
Errors and omissions from yesterday's program, and look, a couple on myself. I'll call 3 on myself here actually. Said Jaden Nelson coming over from TFC. He did play in Germany before coming straight to Vancouver. So there was a stop in between his TFC and Vancouver years. Lekramaki played 8:47, not 6:24 Sunday against Utah. And as Dave Hall mentioned earlier in that interview, there were a lot of people, ourselves included, wondering like just when might Tom Willander drop into the Canucks lineup. He feels assured that Boston University is going to make the NCAA tournament. So as he explained, you're looking at April, not March for that. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.